นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings to you all. As a monk and student of Ajahn Char, sometimes people will ask us, do you have any, the word in Thai is they say Khong Di, which means do you have any good things? Which I think most monks will have many good things in their life. But what Thai people mean when they say, do you have any good things? What they mean is, do you have any amulets or medallions made by or blessed by Ajahn Char? And Ajahn Char, perhaps partly it was the time he lived in, the era, but more importantly I think his emphasis on the practice of the Dhamma. He really didn't have a lot of interest or time for making amulets, distributing amulets and those kind of religious objects. Not that he dismissed them as fruitless or pointless or wrong, but he wanted to get people to practice Dhamma, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, Dana, meditation, so on, rather than what he might say, clinging to externals, such as an amulet or a medallion. He wanted people to develop their own insight and wisdom into the truth so that they could really free themselves from suffering. And the cultural attachment to amulets in Buddhist communities can be a bit of an obstacle in practice, because sometimes it brings up a lot of faith and joy to have amulets, see them and so on, but sometimes the emphasis on faith and belief in the teacher or in the Buddha and the miraculous qualities of the teacher or the Buddha can lead the candidate perhaps to a form of complacency. The person becomes complacent in their practice and don't go on to develop as much insight as they could. So Ajahn Char didn't really emphasize these things. Nevertheless, occasionally people would make amulets, bring them to Ajahn Char to bless, and perhaps out of compassion he would oblige and bless the amulets. Especially at that time, soldiers and Air Force officers would see Ajahn Char quite often, because it was during the Vietnam War and they were engaged in fighting. And so soldiers often want to have some Khong Di or good things to take with them as a protection, a blessing, something to remind them of the Buddha, of goodness in life. Just as even some monks will take them out into the forest when they're going into the Dhamma battle, not the battle with guns and bombs, but the battle against defilements and meeting with fearful, challenging situations like goats and tigers. They like to have an amulet with them sometimes. So people would make amulets, bring them to Ajahn Char to bless. Sometimes he would refuse by saying, don't attach to these external parts of the practice, develop your own mindfulness and insight. But sometimes he would take the amulets, bless them, and then return them or distribute them out of compassion. So there's one amulet. There's hardly any amulets made in the name of Ajahn Char, so it's not hard to know what they are, because there's only one or two. But one of the famous ones was had some writing on it. Most amulets might have a picture of the Buddha and then some writing in Pali or Thai, maybe the name of the teacher, the name of a monastery, or some teaching from the Buddha. And this one, the famous one, has the 4 Brahma Vihara Dhammas written on it, which usually as we learn, go in, and there's a series, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, these 4 qualities, sublime abidings, 4 wholesome qualities of Brahmas, Brahma gods, that are so useful to develop in the practice of meditation and general practice of Buddhism. But on this medallion, the order of them has been reversed slightly. So it goes metta, karuna, upekkha, mudita. The last one is mudita, which always catches people's attention because they're so used to the normal formula with upekkha at the end and mudita as the 3rd quality. And the story goes that why they asked Ajahn Char why this one says mudita at the end, and he said because it's hard to develop. Strictly speaking, according to the Buddhist teachings, probably upekkha, equanimity towards all physical and mental phenomena, meaning not giving into liking or disliking any form of clinging and attachment. That's probably the hardest quality to develop in meditation or in wise reflection, in life in general. To maintain equanimity is very difficult. Only really the arahants, the enlightened ones, have really done that. Nevertheless, perhaps Ajahn Char had a point that mudita is a quality that often disappears in society very quickly. Literally translates in English as sympathetic joy, altruistic joy, joy at the happiness and success of others and oneself. Like all of the Brahma Viharas, when one practices or develops mudita, one is developing to oneself and to others equally at the same time. Especially as a meditation object, when you develop a meditation object that you can use to focus the mind, to be calm, one-pointed, attain samadhi. Well, when samadhi is there, the mind is not choosy. So you're not choosing between this person or that, oneself or others. Then the mudita is in all directions to all beings equally when it's established. But Ajahn Char, his point was that our society's culture and just human nature, perhaps the untrained human mind, tends towards negativity. We tend towards negative thoughts, finding fault with ourselves, looking for, finding the fault in ourselves, finding the faults in others, holding on to them, remembering them, fixing them in our minds. The faults of the things around us, the world. We're always finding imperfections with our physical form and then the form of the world around us, other people's physical form, what other people say and do, material objects, the environment, everything becomes something where we tend to find fault with and focus on the negative. And the untrained mind does this. Ajahn Char used to say it flows downhill like water. Water always flows down to the lowest point. It goes according to gravity. Perhaps that's why it's hard to practice the Dhamma in space, because there's no gravity, so things like that don't happen. If you see pictures of astronauts in space, water goes in all directions. So some of the normal rules of life don't apply, and then maybe that makes it harder to contemplate. I don't know. Anyway, normally speaking, water flows downhill. And he said our mind is the same. Flowing downhill for the mind means we go to the negative easily. Unless we're careful, unless we're training the mind, practicing with this mind, it'll look for what's wrong, what's bad. It will remember what's bad and wrong more than what's good, perhaps. When we talk to each other, we'll talk a little bit about what's good and right and correct and perfect, and then a lot about what's not right, not correct, not perfect. That's what human means and the human mind tends to do. We tend towards competitiveness, jealousy, more than kindness and mudita. And mudita is the opposite of jealousy and envy. It's the appreciation of the good in oneself and others. We say sympathetic joy. One is sharing in the joy and the success of others and wishing that it continues. Jealousy, envy generally leads to one thinking, I hope that their success collapses quickly. I hope they are not successful, or if they are successful, I hope it doesn't last. I hope they meet with failure. And even ourselves sometimes. Things do go well in our lives. We have many good things in our lives. Every human being will have some good in their life. But often we undermine it. We kind of get caught into this negative way of thinking that say, oh, I don't deserve this, or it's not real, or it won't last. So sometimes even our own success we don't acknowledge, or we move on and kind of ignore it. And certainly with others in our world nowadays, we're very competitive. At school, we're taught to be competitive in academic studies, sports, social things. Even nowadays with social media and everything, we're always competing to see who has the most number of likes or friends. In work, we tend to have to compete with other people for a job, to get on, to get ahead. That's the nature of our society, so it's very easy for the quality of mudita to disappear. Jealousy, competitiveness takes over. Negativity takes over. And little wonder that the modern mindset is full of all kinds of neurosis, paranoia, fears, worries, anxiety, depression, disappointment. What all form the basis for mental illness and mental unhappiness, mental suffering. Even though the world as a place generally is much better off than it used to be. Materially, there's a lot less people suffering starvation than ever before in the history of the world. There's less. There's less people without any access to any kind of medical help. There are people struggling with starvation and lack of medicine for illness, but less than before. All kinds of things have developed in the world, cures to diseases and all kinds of conveniences and helpful things that we've developed, technology obviously, but also the economy and government and the way we do things. Many things have improved over the centuries. So there's a lot to be happy about, and yet we tend to gravitate towards the negative views and the negative thoughts in our mind and looking around at the world in that negative light. So perhaps that's why Aent Char emphasized mudita, because it's a quality that can perhaps quite quickly bring us back to normality and even some happiness, because there are many good things in our life. Why can I say that? Even not to diminish or ignore the suffering of people, oneself and others, but we're talking particularly here as a way of training your mind. You have to learn how to recognize, acknowledge the good in your life. This is for good mental health. This is for helping the mind to be at ease, calm, peaceful, so you can improve your level of mindfulness and from that improve your level of wisdom and insight. Many of you will know how when you meditate, you seem to be battling with negative thoughts, negative memories, dissatisfaction, discontent, accumulated stuff. We often use the word stuff, the stuff of the mind that we've brought along with us. When we start meditating, it all comes up. Can overwhelm us, can be a big obstacle, can make meditation seem like hard work and not a very attractive thing too. So we have to find ways to deal with that because it's such a common experience. So one of those ways is to practice mudita consciously, bring the quality out. Like the practice of metta and karuna, kindness, compassion, mudita, we have to maybe develop to ourselves first as a way of training the mind to recognize what is good in my life, good qualities that we have in our heart, good things that have happened to us, good situations we've been in, good things also in the world around us, so the good in others, the good in our history, what we've done in the past and what's been done with us and to us in the past. When we meditate or we talk about Buddhism, so much we're talking about suffering and what went wrong and what happened and how to deal with suffering. But one of the immediate ways to deal with suffering is focus your mind on what's good. And not to, as I said, not to be blind to suffering or to try and deny it or hide it, but just to recognize a big part of our suffering is simply the mind dwelling on what is wrong, negative, too much. So redressing that, balancing out by focusing on what is good, what is right. And you can do that at the beginning of meditation. You practice mudita for yourself. Think about what is right in this situation as you begin your meditation. We generally, as Buddhists, particularly in the monastery, before you meditate, you bow to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. That's something to have mudita for, the fact that you have some faith, interest in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, the teachings, in the Sangha, and particularly noble Sangha, and particularly living Sangha maybe, that you know or have respect for. To bring those to mind brings up a sense of mudita. It's your good fortune that you've met the teachings, that you have faith in the Buddha. Another thing you can bring to mind as you begin a meditation is you're here and present, you're in a reasonable health. If you're able to meditate, your health is good enough to support that, even if you're not in perfect health. But generally speaking, if you can sit down and put your attention on the breathing, or you can walk up and down, doing walking meditation, and you have good enough health to support that, and that's something to be happy about. Obviously, we want to continue with our good health, so this is the practice of mudita, recognizing your good opportunity to hear and practice Dhamma, recognizing your good health so that you can practice Dhamma. Having mudita for yourself as a human being in a situation where you have the time, say, to practice. Nowadays we're all poor, we have time poverty, we're all busy, super busy with very little time, and often we use that as an excuse not to do good things. We say, no time to meditate, no time to listen to Dhamma, no time to go and practice dana or charity, busy, busy, busy. But if you finally come to the point where you're sitting down to meditate, pause and take stock of that. Remind yourself how fortunate you are. I can sit here, meditate for however long I've got. That's my good fortune, because many people don't get that chance. Life is too difficult, too challenging. They may have to work just to make ends meet every day, no rest, or they don't have a place to meditate. It's just too difficult wherever they live, whatever their situation is, and so on. Or they're too ill, or too much pressure from one thing or another in their life. But if you do have the chance to practice, you do have the chance to listen to Dhamma, that's your great good fortune. And mudita is recognizing that and saying, may this continue. May I have more good opportunities to practice like this one I have now. I'm just giving you examples of how to introduce mudita into your thinking at the beginning of a meditation, or of course at any time in your day you can do this, as a counter to the negativity that we love to dwell on and be with in our mind. And if you do this regularly, you'll get better at it. You get more skilled at recognizing the things that you can have mudita for in your life. The good things. The real good things. Having a medallion of Ajahn Char, I would say, is a good thing, but it's really superficial, isn't it? It's out there. What he was pointing to is, the good things in your life, the good qualities in your heart, the good opportunities, the good Dhamma that you can bring up in your own heart and mind and practice. That's the real good things, and we all have that. So many people also, they tend towards self-deprecation or even self-criticism, self-aversion so easily. But if you were able to even put your mind on the breath just for a few moments, you might say, I've got no samadhi, I can't meditate. But just think, that's already a very positive thing in your life, that you can at least try, you can at least do that. You don't have to think about the results yet. You don't have to think how much samadhi you've gained or whether you're going to get enlightened or not this life, all the sort of regular doubts of the Buddhist meditator. You don't have to go that way. You can just say, at the moment I have a chance to practice meditation. This is good. May this continue. And be happy for yourself. If you're experiencing some suffering because you've made a few mistakes in your day or in your week or last year or whatever, pause and say, these mistakes were made, things went wrong, bad things have happened, but I still am able to sit here, meditate, following the path of the Buddha. I must have done something good in the past, otherwise I wouldn't be here. You can thank your old self. We often talk about, everything is not self, shouldn't talk about self. Well, you can still use the concept of self just for convenience when you're considering your life. And so you can say, I can thank my old self, last life self, that probably did some good, learned to meditate maybe last life, and so this life I have the interest and I've come back to it. If I had no previous interest in meditation, it's unlikely I would be here now meditating. So you can say thanks to your old self. However bad you've been, there's some good in there, and you can bring that up at this time. Really something to rejoice and recognize. And not to overdo it. We're not, just saying it's all good and not recognizing our faults at all. But sometimes we do need to set aside the negative mind state, the fault-finding mind, and just go with the good, recognize the good, seek it out. One reason is also because if you're going to have and develop mudita for other people, you need to be able to do it for yourself first. Otherwise, very difficult to have true mudita for others, true joy, happiness, wishing others to have success and maintain their success and their good conditions. And ultimately it equalizes out. You develop mudita for yourself, for others, for yourself, back and forth like that until it's just established as a thought in your mind. That's when maybe there's a chance it can become samadhi, one-pointedness. So recognizing the good in yourself and then moving on to others generally will uplift your mind. It can help you, overcome a lot of negativity very quickly as you meditate. If you're thinking of others, maybe to start off, to make it easier, you think of others people who you find you easily can respect, you can easily remember or recollect their good qualities. So it could be people who've helped us, or perhaps parents, or teachers. Sometimes it's helpful to think of people and their good qualities of people we know. Or it can be more abstract, you're thinking of what qualities make a good person, and people you maybe heard about but don't know. You've read about them, heard about them, well, you think of them if they seem to embody those qualities. But you can practice mudita on many levels. So maybe in the beginning it's for people who have some Dhamma in them. So it could be noble ones, teachers or well-practiced monks, nuns, or even lay people. But also you can expand it to just people who are doing good things in their life. They may not be advanced in their Dhamma practice, but they have qualities that you can see and witness and know about. People who are kind, generous, people who have got knowledge that they use to help others. And there are many, many people in this world with all kinds of good qualities that they share and use to contribute to society, to make the world a better place. You can think of them and wish for their knowledge and their skills and their good qualities to continue and continue to do good in the world. You can also think of people you know who maybe have had misfortune or difficulty but have recovered or got beyond that. The obvious one is somebody who's been ill but they've recovered. So as you practice mudita going out into the world, at first it can be an intellectual exercise. You're thinking through, remembering people, remembering themes, situations, events that have happened. But as you refine it down and do it more often, it becomes just a quality that the happiness, recognizing the goodness in yourself and others, to a point where it's really more like a feeling than actually having to think a lot about it. Sometimes they say you can meditate when you are developing it as a meditation and you're one point in the mind. Well, you might just recite the word mudita, mudita, sympathetic joy, or it could be just joy, the joy in yourself, in others, in the good fortune, rejoicing in the good fortune, but just saying a simple word that symbolizes that, and at the same time cultivating this happiness at the success, the goodness of others or yourself. So it's something you can do at any time if you do it a lot, not just in formal meditation to kind of brighten your mind at the beginning of a meditation to clear away some of that negativity, but also, at times when you've got a few moments, just let your mind dwell on mudita as opposed to dwelling on the negative, jealous, critical, depressed thoughts that we often get caught into. You dwell on mudita. Think about people around you and their successes. Be happy for them. See if you can do that. Obviously, where it can be really healing is when you move on to think of people who perhaps in the past have made you feel jealous, envious, discontent in one way or another. Come back to them. Somebody always seems to be smarter than you. Somebody meditates always seems to be more peaceful than you. Somebody seems to be more generous than you, always seems to do more than you. If you're a meditator, there'll always be someone who sits longer than you, or walks meditation longer than you, or stays up later at night, or gets up earlier in the morning. There'll be those people who seem to do it better in all walks of life, not just meditation, of course. In every walk of life, there'll be people around who seem to do things better. This is where you can bring up the mudita to counter perhaps you've got some jealousy festering there, it's been bubbling away in your mind for a while, making you feel unhappy. Maybe you can really change it into something better. When I was a young monk, I was always looking at other monks saying, this one seems to meditate so well, sits so straight, can sit in full lotus for so long, seems so calm, restrained. Or some monks can chant everything so beautifully and they remember all the chants very well. And some monks can do walking meditation. I didn't have a lot of jealousy, but maybe there's a little bit of sort of not happiness that the others can do these things that I can't. The skillful thing is bring up the mudita and just aspire to emulate what their good example. But sometimes you might have this sort of jealousy. Oh, why are they always so good and why am I so bad? So you have to work on the mudita sometimes. And I'm sure in the lay life, if you go to work, different things in society will bring up jealousy, envy, competitiveness. We all know these thoughts, these moods. So you have to work at it sometimes. That's where you're really filling out your mind, your heart, to the point of one-pointedness, where no one can shake your mudita. You can have mudita for everyone. And it doesn't just mean the people you like or you're close to, everyone. And so particularly there may be someone who has caused you jealousy in the past. Or just try and see the goodness, the success, if they have success, the happiness they've achieved, well, be happy for them. As I was saying, when you meditate, there'll always be someone else who seem to meditate better than you. They're more mindful, they can sit longer, they seem to be wiser. Well, I used to say, well, that's one less bit of suffering in the world. When I recognize someone else is practicing well, getting beyond their suffering, that's one less bit of suffering in the world. That makes my world better if I can see that. Mudita is a quality that improves everyone's world, not just one's individual world, one's own mind. It improves the mind of everyone else as well. And it's recognizing that. If jealousy and envy has disappeared from the world by 1 unit, then mudita has increased by 1 unit. If everyone practiced mudita for a day or a moment of a day, that'd be 8 billion units of mudita arising. The world would immediately become a better place. And if they could do it a bit more than just for 1 moment, the world would become such a good place. So this is a theme that we often neglect or forget about, as Ajahn Char put it in number 4. We hear a lot of Dhamma teachings, and we have to be mindful, equanimous to all the conditions that change, the pain, the pleasure, and so on. So even equanimity we're often encouraged to develop, and that's correct. Loving kindness, compassion, of course. But mudita is often not talked about that much, and yet it's such a healing, positive quality that can really help our mind settle down. Of course, sometimes it's hard to find the good in any person or in any situation. Mudita can seem far away sometimes. So you have to train yourself in this quality, and then you'll start noticing it. Even in the darkest situation, when people are say somebody's very ill, they may even be close to death. You say, well, how can you have mudita for them? Well, maybe you know their life, they've done good things in their life, and you can remember them, recollect them. Maybe you know some of the good things they've done, and you can just feel happy that they didn't waste their life. They made some good karma, they helped people, they meditated, they did this, they did that. If you know that, then it's easy to practice mudita for them. Even if it's a total stranger on their deathbed, you can have mudita that they were born as a human being, because that already is an amazing thing, to be born as a human being. And if someone's born as a human being, they almost certainly will have made some good karma somewhere along the line, and you can be happy for that. So it's a practice we develop on many levels, particularly on the level of meditation, training the mind to give up negativity, jealousy, envy, competitiveness. But as you can see, it spreads out into our speech, our actions, our general livelihood. And people who practice a lot of mudita, have a lot of mudita, are very pleasant to live with. Simple as that. If you want to live a happy life and enjoy life, develop more mudita. Doesn't mean to say you're perfect, but you can appreciate the good things in yourself and others in an honest, mindful way. Do it, because it brings joy. It helps your mind settle down in meditation quickly and easily. You'll notice a lot of the obstacles to meditation is just habitual going to negative thinking. So like any other meditation, you have to train in this, practice maybe every day, dedicate a period of time to the practice of mudita. When you meet people who have developed it well, you realize they just have it quite naturally. The peaceful mind quite naturally has mudita. It's easy to be happy at the success of others. It's easy to appreciate joy and good qualities in others. You don't have to be number one, you don't have to be the center of attention, because you're happy already. If you've been developing meditation and you've attained some inner peace and happiness and some wisdom there, then other people seem to do better than you, or get more than you, or get a better deal than you. Doesn't matter. Be happy for them. It's easy, because you're already peaceful. You really don't mind. And when we're still caught into the competitive mind, it's hard to do that. So you have to work at it, train the mind, go against some of those old habits. Being a monk, you're naturally channeled in the way of mudita, because you live according to the code of discipline of a monk, the Vinaya. You say in the monastery, you say when you collect your food in the morning for your meal, you go according to seniority, and that's just the way it is. You can't change that. One monk will have been ordained before another monk, so he can go ahead in the line, collect his food first. And the way you sit, the way lodgings are assigned, things are assigned, maybe one monk will seem to get a better deal than another. But if you're there watching this, then you can just appreciate with mudita, oh, this monk is at the head of the line, seems to get the best deal, gets the most things offered to him, or gets the cushiest jobs to do, whether that's true or not. You can at least have some mudita for another monk, say. We can do this in so many ways. When you seem to be suffering or missing out, or life is not going so well, but you bring up mudita as a reflection, then you can find some happiness sometimes in the simplest little situation. Somebody else seems to get more than you, better pay than you, a better job than you. Well, be happy for them. Rather than just sitting there complaining, being the negative one. Oh, why do I always get the worst jobs? Why do I always get second best? Why do they always get a better one than me? When you do that, you're unhappy. Simple as that. When you practice mudita, you can let go of that and enjoy what's going on, even if you are getting second best. Monks sometimes compete with themselves, not in being jealous and competitive, but to practice mudita and to counter these tendencies. So sometimes, particularly in situations where there's not much in the terms of requisites or food, many times as a monk, been in a situation where I've had a meal with a few other monks and there hasn't been a lot of food. So monks love to share their small amount of food with another monk who maybe has less. They'll share, some little treat. You get offered a can of drink. I've been in a group of monks, like walking in the forest where there's maybe 5 monks. It's hot, sweaty, and someone comes along and they offer like 2 bottles of cold Pepsi Cola or something, but there's 5 monks. And there's no cup, so you might think, oh, I'm just going to have to, 2 monks will get the bottle, but another 3 will go without. And then they're all just passing, you take it, you take it, you take it, you take it. It takes forever to sort it out because everyone is being very kind and practicing mudita for the others. Oh, you have it, I'll be so happy if you have it. Or sometimes we do it with qualities. You meet a monk, you say, "Oh, Venerable, you're so good at chanting, you're so good, your chanting is so melodious, or sounds so good, sounds so clear, and you always remember the words correctly, you have such good mindfulness." And then the other monk would say, "Oh, but you so robed so well." In the time of the Buddha they would do this. Everyone likes to quote Sariputta and Moggallana. They were the two monks we hold up as a good example of noble friendship. Two monks who are always sort of sacrificing for each other, looking after each other when they're ill, giving each other requisites, helping each other out, praising each other. The opposite. When you have mudita, you'll praise someone. You won't be jealous and criticize or want them to be in the background. You're quite happy for them to be praised. So when Sariputta is sitting meditating in the forest and two yakas go by, mischievous yakas, these giants with big clubs go by and see him meditating, one of them is very jealous of him. And he says, "Oh, that monk, look at him. Thinks he owns the world, sitting there meditating, thinking he's more peaceful than anyone else. He's like an affront to us. I've got to teach him a lesson." And the other one says, "Well, we better be careful. That's Sariputta. They say he's an arahant and he's very pure. If you go and hurt him, you'll probably get in big trouble. There'll be big karma." But the first one is so upset, seeing Sariputta, and he's so jealous of him, he wanders up to him and with his big club he smashes him on the head. Sariputta is in fourth jhana, meditating. Nothing happens. He just sits there, equanimous. So equanimous, he doesn't even move. So the yaka who hit him on the head goes away going, that didn't seem to work. And the other one said, "Oh, you better watch it now. You've done a very terrible thing. You're going to hit Sariputta on the head." And they walked off because it didn't work. It didn't do anything, apparently. And then Moggallana is nearby. Moggallana could see the yakas because he can see these beings in other realms. An ordinary person wouldn't be able to see them, but he can. So he rushes up to Sariputta. He says, "Are you all right? I just saw a yaka smash you on the head with his club." And Sariputta just rubs his head a bit and said, "I got a bit of a headache." He comes out of his jhana and there is a headache, but he's not attached to it because he's practicing vipassana. He's saying, "Oh, this pain arises, ceases, it's not self." No real suffering, even though there is a little bit of pain. And Moggallana says, "Oh, how wonderful, how marvelous. Sariputta is so mindful and his insight is so deep, a yaka can smash him on the head with a blow that would normally shatter someone's skull into 1,000 pieces. And all he does is scratch his head saying, 'Oh, I got a bit of a headache.' How amazing, he's so mindful." And Sariputta returns the favour. "Oh, you're so amazing, your psychic powers are so amazing. You can see a yaka and you can see a yaka smashing another person on the head. Normal people can't see this." So they're mutually praising each other, mudita for each other. That's how monks, well-trained monks with natural mudita, treat each other. They praise each other. One of them's good in one thing, so they bring that up, and the others are good in another thing, so they bring that up. We can all do with a bit more of that. Instead of putting each other down, being jealous, being negative, competitive, we have to praise each other and raise each other up a bit. Makes us feel happier and makes the world a better place. We need more of that in society, being more helpful, more praise of each other, more supportive of each other through the practice of mudita. I remember when Ajahn Mahabua came to Wat Mapjan once to see the monks give a talk, and he's giving a talk about the Dhamma, about the practice of the Dhamma, but his talk kept getting interrupted by a baby. Someone was carrying their young baby in the front row, and so the baby kept screaming and screaming, and so he could talk a few words and then the baby would scream so loudly he'd have to stop talking and no one could hear. So he went on for about 5 minutes, and then he said, "Oh, I can't give a talk, it's just too noisy, the baby was too loud." So I said, "Really, I don't need to give a talk. All you need to know is this monk," is pointing to Ajahn, "this monk is well practiced and you can trust him, his teachings are very good, listen to him." And that was the end of his talk that day, praising Ajahn, and basically saying, he's a very wise, enlightened monk, you should follow him. That's how monks treat each other, with mudita. When there's no attachment to sense of self, ego, then there's little or no conceit, then all that's left is to have metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. But until that point, we need to develop more mudita. It's a quality that's sort of lacking in society, lacking in our hearts. So we have to put more effort into it. That's probably why Aent Char put it as last on the list, just to emphasize the importance of developing it. Anyway, maybe I'll just leave you with these reflections on the quality of mudita tonight, and if anyone has any questions afterwards, I'll try and answer them.